tonight I'll just be talking about where I come from in the regards of design, where I've been, and then where I think I will be. So the title of this lecture is I spit on my recent paintings and I let the computer draw for me. The vision, the visionary, and the visualization. It's just sort of necessary in the design field that we come up with a vision. Myself, I'm the visionary, and then the product is the visualization. Next slide. Whenever I begin the design process, I feel like a kid again. It's the most euphoric and optimistic moment in my life whenever I create something. And from the beginning, I feel as though it's just endless possibilities. And in the end, I feel as though I really accomplished something. However, in between, it can be very detrimental to my health, both psychologically and physically. I feel as though sometimes I get lost, I get in a rut. I don't know exactly where I'm going, but it's really worth it every time I go through it. I've heard professors liken it to sort of a drug experience. You can't really explain it unless you actually do it yourself. History. I began with drawing cartoons. I don't mean just in the regard of I was 6 years old and I drew cartoons, although that is true. Even when I did draw cartoons as a child, I always had a greater meaning behind the cartoons. And of course, as adults, I'm sure I look upon children and I say, oh, look at them, they're drawing cute little cartoons. But with me, I really wanted to interact with the audience. I wanted people to understand what exactly I was trying to present. So I remember this one example. I was about 6 or 7 years old. I drew these two figures. I believe one had a cat head, one had a dog head, and they were called Super Cat, Super Dog. And they were flying through the air much like Superman flies through the air in the movie. And I showed it to my mother and my aunt, and they said, oh, this is so cute. Look what Barrett just drew. And I would say, no, you must understand. There's so much more behind this. Do you not understand why they're posing like this? Do you not understand why this outfit is? Do you not understand why a dog and a cat are flying next to each other and why they're in such space as they are? And they would just say, oh, this is so cute. You know, Barrett's a little artist. And later on, I actually did develop as a cartoonist for when I actually began to consider myself to try to pursue a degree in art. I did cartoon lessons for about 3 years. And I find it still comes to fruition nowadays. So here's just an example. I drew this a few years ago. It's sort of just a cartoon children's book that I was going to do. This character's named Franklin. He's sort of going through a city right now, and then through just different page titles that I was going to start using. Next slide. This was also drawn a few years ago. I drew this for some friends. Down here, you can hardly see it. There's a little monkey, and he's staring up at this banana on a tree. And this is just sort of the first panel. And the idea was that there's this little monkey, and he's really distraught. He's trying to get this banana, but he's so far up in the tree. And on this right panel, I tried to draw a sort of a figure drawing, because we had to do a lot of drawing back in high school. And I just wanted to show people that I can actually draw. I just don't draw simple cartoons. And so this was a plush toy, sort of in the ear of the monkey, I call it, because the monkey kept reoccurring in my projects. And here he is on the right panel. He's very satisfied. You know, he's sort of leaning back with his hands like this, and he has this little smile upon his face. And this is just sort of a cartoon moving into more of the fine arts. After my years in high school and moving into college, I moved into high theory. My explanation of high theory is sort of thinking that the idea of the project is much more important than the aesthetics. Next slide. So here was a project that we had to do something interesting with food. We also had to install it somewhere. Before I came to A&M, I was really interested in installations. I felt as though people could interact more with installations than anything else. And I'll touch on that a little bit. But here, we have this orange, and I tried to make this sort of setup like this orange is a martyr. So he's hanging from the gallows, and this orange is sort of his skin being spread apart on this really cheap paper towel. And this is very cheap string and very cheap stool, sort of sitting in this large procession area that was the architecture building. So there's a lot behind it, but you wouldn't initially think it. This is where I became with high theory. Next slide. And this is another project. Once again, in the year of the monkey. Here's the monkey plush toy. This project dealt with nightmares, childhood, becoming an adult. It had all these grand theories, but the presentation was very poor. I admit it. You can't really see it, but there's this extension cord that ran. You can see this much better in person. It's sort of hanging with a light bulb and this little cardboard swing and this cheap string that was used on the orange project as well. And my professor just told me outright that she completely hated this project. It actually dropped my grade from an A to a C. And I had to stay the summer session because it was in the spring. I had to stay the summer session and do another project. I was completely devastated by this project. I felt as though I put my heart and soul into it, but it wasn't accepted by the professor or the people that saw the presentation. So, next slide. I didn't completely give up theory. And the next semester, we had another very theoretical project with really strict guidelines. You can't really see it here, but this was sort of a group project, and there were 4 of us in this group. You can obviously see these other people's projects, but mine was sort of lost in translation. The guidelines were that we had to have 3 materials, one being wood, which consisted of the frame. We had to have 2 other materials and had to stay within this certain depth. And so I came at this project trying to be myself, and myself thinking that I'm clever. I designed the frame out of wood. It's this little object down here that you can hardly see. It's sort of lost in the screen. And my 2 other materials were light and shadow. Now, on the final presentation day, our professor just outright told me, and I quote, my conceptual box was too literal, which I took to believe that she meant that I didn't push the project far enough. I personally tried to fit within the guidelines because when I designed this, I thought about, okay, this thing has to be 10 inches in square. So I designed it where there's a platform for this object, and it's casting the light, and so the shadow fits within the 10 inches as well. So I stayed within the guidelines. Like I said, my material was wood, which was the only material I really had, and it was the frame, because it was the only object I really had. But when I showed it to her, she just completely hated it. It's kind of like my other professor. And so I was completely devastated with this as well. But having said that, you must surround yourself with people who agree to disagree. These professors completely disliked my final presentations. And it really made me go back and try to analyze, what did I do wrong? Where did I need to go, but I didn't go? And so, next slide. I began to remove myself from representing things. I tried to say, okay, I need to stop thinking so much. They used to tell me that, Barrett, you need to stop thinking. You just need to do it. You just need to stop thinking as much as you do. And so on the side, I did a lot of painting. And you can see here, these weren't actually part of school projects.